Right now, it is time for the Berkshire Edge on air. You can find the Berkshire Edge, of course, online, the BerkshireEdge.com, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But on a Wednesday morning, we can find the folks from the Berkshire Edge live on the radio. We say good morning to Marcy and David. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you.
Marcy sounds like she's in the background. Yeah. Is she getting the coffee?
Marcy.
I've got 2 cups of coffee, so I'm ready for this.
You're ready.
I need 3, but 2 will do.
It's just that Marcy sounds like she's on another
bringing
planet.
The toast.
Yes.
Yeah. No, is she there? No.
We cannot hear Marcy at all.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
now we
are.
can hear you.
Now
we can hear you.
Oh, that's interesting. Different phone instrument. But I am here.
Amazing how that works, isn't it?
Amazing.
Who invented this, anyway?
Okay.
Giving new meaning to the Breakfast Club.
Well,
this is Don McNeil. Where's Don McNeil?
Don McNeil. He's no longer dancing around the table. Unfortunately, he's under the dirt, as we say.
Do you remember that?
I remember Don McNeil. Absolutely, no doubt about it.
Yep.
Hey, the Great Barrington Select Board. They're considering taking over the Housatonic Waterworks.
Oh, yes.
Well, this company is not doing its job.
Yeah. There are still privately owned water companies. Most water companies, of course, have become public property, and because it's in public interest. But in the little village of Housatonic, which is a village in just north of the center of Great Barrington, they have a private water company, and it's really run out of resources to upgrade and maintain its system. And then all kinds of complaints about rusty water and not enough pressure, more and as dangerous is the fact that the hydrants don't have the pressure they need to should a fire occur for the fire trucks. So the Great Barrington Selectmen have finally decided that they've got to really seriously think about taking over this water company, which is owned by a guy named Jim Mercer, and his family's owned it for many, many, many years.
And the problem is that as a privately owned company, it's not eligible for the kind of public subsidies and support that it would be if it were owned by the town. So while it's in private hands, it's never going to be able to modernize itself. And the water quality is just awful. I mean, we have pictures of a water filter that gets filled with residue overnight in a Housatonic residence, and this is disgusting. It's you wouldn't want to go near this water, and even with a filter, it's not clear that it's all coming out.
What's interesting about this is this has been the case here in Connecticut as well. Falls Village just went through this, where they had a small water company, and it cannot meet. There's no way in God's name that it can meet everything that has to be done on the federal standards. So they were sold. I think Aquarian purchased them.
They're a big outfit that owns these formerly private water companies around. Yeah, but I mean, by the way, this is not a new issue. This has been going on for the last 10 or 15 years. Periodically, something will happen to the Housatonic water system, and then there'll be this talk about, really, it needs to be part of the public system to be able to sustain itself. But we'll see how whether Jim Mercer can be forced to sell it, or whether the town will just have to take him with take it by eminent domain.
Well, I would think that if he doesn't want to sell it, I would think that the eminent domain route would go, because there's no way in today's modern legalities that a small water company can legally do everything or financially do everything
No,
they have
they
to
can't. Right.
Well, they might. If he were some kind of billionaire, he might be able to do it. But he isn't, and the water company isn't either. So it's an interesting, it's just the Housatonic Water Company, Waterworks, is really a throwback to a much earlier time, in which the town water supplies were in fact privately owned.
Yeah, but it's not sustainable anymore.
Well, remember, you used to remember the roads were turnpikes.
Yeah.
Which were privately owned too.
Well, there's still one over in Dutchess County called the Shunpike, where
the Shunpike, that's right.
But it's still, it's no longer. It's not a Shunpike, but that's it kept the name. But no, but really,
we have one in Egremont called Shuntole Road.
You better tell people what a Shunpike is.
Which is another road that you could avoid the toll on 23.
Right.
Yeah, well, the Shunpike was, of course, named because it shunned the
right.
other roads. But
Right.
people used to collect tolls on them and go from there onward. But really, the water company, that's something totally different. And I'm not necessarily in favor of big companies taking over. But when you can't afford to run something, and because you can't afford to run it, all of a sudden people's health comes into question. I just think there's no other answer.
Well, the issue too is there was a building that used to stand in the center of Housatonic. It was a great big old multi-story building that had a department store in it. Really, this was back in the day, and some apartments on the second and third floor, and it burned down. And the reason it did was that the hydrants from this Housatonic Waterworks had no pressure, and they couldn't put the fire out.
Well, there you go.
So that's the other issue, is that the system itself just needs a serious upgrade. And, it'll become part of the town water system.
And it'll get all kinds of government subsidies, too.
Right.
And it'll get cleaned up.
Yep.
Well, like I said, I'm not necessarily a big believer in big companies, but when it comes to these small water companies, it's impossible for them to keep up. It just is. It's not possible, and it's not good for the community.
Well, I think it's an issue of recognizing that there are certain things like water and roads that are really in the public interest. They're not. It's not a private, for-profit operation. It's a publicly owned resource, and that's how it should be maintained. But this, as I say, this Housatonic Waterworks is just a throwback to an earlier time.
A time that no longer really functions quite well. Well, we'll go from water to a good news story.
Right.
Oh, yeah. This is a story about a young guy named Charlie Seckler, who I remember him. I remember him growing up. I've known this kid for a long, long time.
He's still growing up.
Well, yeah, he's still growing up. But he's devised a system for he's now a college student at New York University, but he's grew up in Egremont, and my older boy went to school with him, so I do know who he is. And he has devised a system for restaurants to be able to for people to be able to order stuff online and for local restaurants. And it's a system that will help restaurants survive this COVID-19 pandemic, in which people can't go to the restaurants themselves. He's using something. He's devised something called flow code that allows people to quickly order out from restaurants from Lenox to South Egremont and everywhere in between. So this is quite entrepreneurial, and I must say that he's in a way wheelchair bound. The boy Charlie is, because he has Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. Mm-hmm. So this hasn't stopped him from being quite ingenious. It's a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an app that allows people to use their cell phones to do touchless ordering at restaurants for pickup.
Yep.
And now he has plans to expand the concept to the New York City subway system. So stay tuned. This kid is on the move.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go from the New York City subway system to the Railroad Street Youth Project.
Yes,
how about that for a second?
That's a perfect segue.
Right.
Well, we have a gorgeous mural in downtown Great Barrington that was created by the Railroad Street Youth Project, and it celebrates the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's hard to describe. So you really have to go to the Berkshire Edge and see the picture. And that, of course, is theberkshireedge.com.
That's right.
But the picture, these kids have done an amazing job, and it's, there's a lovely young woman who has headed the whole thing, who's a sophomore at Skidmore and who grew up here.
Right. But this is one of several murals that celebrating W.E.B. Du Bois and the black community that has been that Railroad Street has put up on walls and in the tunnel that goes under the railroad line in the center of Great Barrington. So it's artistic and cheerful and uplifting. And I remember they once did the parking lot, the main parking lot in town. One of the big walls that faces that's on Car Hardware. That's a Car Hardware store, and they painted a huge mural there too. So this is just a wonderful project that they have continued to do for many years actually. And they have a new one that celebrates Black Lives Matter. And
come to Great Barrington and see it. It's hard to describe.
What's interesting about these murals is, I don't know if you heard about, years ago in Rhinebeck, there was a mural painted on the side of a building. And it was actually a tourist attraction. And with all the latest coming of age and people awakening to Black Lives Matter and everything, they found out that it was, in fact, there were portions of it that were racist. And so the owner of the building had it covered over. So, it's interesting. The murals that are being put up nowadays are totally different than murals that went on the side of buildings.
But of course, murals at that point reflected the time.
Yeah.
So, then you have to have that. You don't have to, but there's the whole art. There's the whole art discussion.
Yeah. And where was this one that you were talking about?
Rhinebeck, in Rhinebeck, New York.
It was the corner. Wasn't it on the corner of a building?
Yeah. And it had been there for years and had been replenished and everything, but
it was well loved, but it was unfortunately deemed. It was deemed unacceptable.
Yeah.
We are seeing things with new eyes.
Well,
I don't know how many times I walked past that statue on Central Park West in front of the Museum of Natural History with Teddy Roosevelt sitting on his horse. And I loved that statue, and I never noticed
Neither did I.
that he had these,
he had an
an
Indian
African American and a Native American standing down below him, as if he subjugated individuals.
But tell me that horse wasn't a magnificent-looking
It was
piece
gorgeous.
of art.
And suddenly, with my new eyes, I see. Oh no! Of course, that statue can't stay.
Well, maybe they'll put a statue up there of.
Maybe they can just put the horse.
Rudy
back.
They can put Teddy Roosevelt down below the horse.
Rudy Giuliani on the back of Donald Trump there.
Never.
That's just a joke, folks. Now don't get mad at me there. All right.
No, don't go there.
All right. Now let's get to Tanglewood, because tomorrow we are recording this, of course, on a Wednesday, but Thursday at Tanglewood, their online gala.
Yep, that's what they have to do, and they're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the violinist Isaac Stern's birth, and that's and it's going to be hosted by Yo-Yo Ma, cellist Yo-Yo Ma, and pianist Emmanuel Axe, and it's Tanglewood being it's going to be a virtual gala. So it's what they've been able to come up with in this odd summer where people cannot be at Tanglewood in the shed enjoying music under the stars. No.
But I also want to add, another not shameless promotion, but. Speaking of Isaac Stern, I am the chair of the board of Close Encounters with Music, which I've mentioned before, and Close Encounters with Music is in partnership with the Mahawi is doing a virtual concert on Sunday afternoon at 5:30 of Yehuda Hanani on the violin and Elliot Fisk
on the cello.
On the cello. Sorry,
right.
Yehuda Hanani on the cello and. Elliot Fisk on guitar. They've played together many times, and they're wonderful. And it will be all online and free on YouTube. And it was Isaac Stern who discovered Yehuda Hanani in Israel. He was in Israel and he discovered this young cellist and brought him to the U.S. And brought him to Juilliard. And so, one of the distinguished cellists in the Berkshires was also discovered by Isaac Stern, but I don't think that he's participating because Close Encounters is having its own summer festival this week, also all on YouTube. It's called the High Peaks Berkshire High Peaks Festival, and you can also find the schedule for that online.
It's interesting because you've got that going on, and a lot. And now we're in mid to late summer, actually, and like the Falcon Ridge Folk Festival is virtual this year, and online, and also Weekend in Norfolk has gone.
Yes, I heard about that, and I think we wrote about it.
We did.
We actually have it on the edge too.
So we have all these organizations that are they're no longer scrambling. They're planning things, and hopefully those things that they're planning. Of course, it's not going to make up the full boatload of money that has been lost, but it's a starting point. It's a starting point for people to be aware. If you want this organization to survive, you're going to have to dig deep.
Yeah. Well, and it's also that at least these venues and theaters and concert halls are not going to be dark all summer.
Yeah.
So it's. I'm wondering. It's going to be interesting to see how they survive. Actually, because they really depend on. The summer season is when they are really. It's really important for so many organizations, not just the cultural organizations, but actually the shops and stores and everyone else.
Yeah,
the whole economy here depends on it.
So this is a perfect time.
By the way, I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but there are actually two outdoor movie festivals going on. The Mahawi is showing movies on Friday and Saturday and maybe Sunday night, but certainly Friday and Saturday, in the parking lot of Simon's Rock College.
And then the BIF, right?
The Berkshire International Film Festival is showing movies in the parking lot of Shakespeare and Company. So these are two quickly established drive-in movie theaters, big screens, and you listen to the sound on a radio frequency, which you can either do if your car, by leaving the radio on in your car, or bringing a charged portable radio, and then they each have people to jump your battery in case if you're listening on your car radio and you lose juice. They each have somebody who comes and jumps your battery so that you can listen to the rest of the movie and drive home.
Well, the Sharon Playhouse has done the same thing. They built an outdoor stage, and they've had a couple of shows already on the outdoor stage, and I do believe they have one coming up also this weekend where people drive in. It's coming up on Saturday, August the 1st, Music and Lyrics, Berlin and Herman, and people drive up in cars, and there's an outdoor stage, the same thing, and it's not per ticket, it's per car.
Yeah,
and they have room for 53 cars, and it's a way to give something back to the community, also make a little bit of money for the nonprofit at the same time. Ankrum Opera House is doing the same thing with their virtual theater, which is going on weekends as well.
And what I wanted to say,
Barrington Stage in Pittsfield is actually opening and having live performances
right, they got
in front of audiences who are all seated quite a bit apart.
And they got special dispensation from Actors Equity to do that.
I don't know. I really don't know.
They did.
I don't know what the arrangement is, but I know that they are beginning to. Today we are running an ad for them. They're starting. I forget when. In early August, they have two things that are going to be running. At Barrington Stage, so it's. So they're trying this, and they're selling tickets too.
All right, now let's go on to
I know that.
Let's go on to our furry friends and then bear sightings. Of course, anybody who looks at my Facebook page knows that at least twice a week I have bears that cross my lawn, and when they're heading into town to feast on garbage on Thursday mornings. But bear sightings all through the area up, and I have to tell people, you got to learn to live with the bears. The bears were here first, really,
Right.
Well, we have a story, a rather amusing story, done by David Edwards, who usually writes about music and Tanglewood and so on. But in his backyard, over in Canaan, New York, he's quite a good photographer. He found a bear eating the grape jelly and from his Baltimore Oriole feeder, and he has these wonderful pictures of this bear slurping, slurping the jelly from his bird feeder. So it's quite an amusing story, and he points out that there's been an unusual number, and there was a report in the Albany Times Union, an uptick, he says, in the number of bear sightings, and that maybe because people are they don't know quite why, but we know that chipmunk numbers are just way up. We've been inundated with chipmunks and squirrels.
We've been under attack. Actually,
yes, they've been eating through our screens.
We have, yes. It's.
All right. Well, we have from squirrels. We have one more. We have room for one more story, so you guys get to pick the one that you want to talk about.
Oh dear. Well, we do have. We mentioned that we have an Edgecast I'll just mention both of them quickly. We have an Edgecast with an interview with State Senator Ben Downing, or former State Senator Ben Downing, delivering a really impassioned address to Sheffield Democrats. And the last story that we should mention is we have an article on where to find local food and farms that's in our Berkshire Edge magazine.
And we do have an online magazine now.
Yes, this is an online magazine.
We were
right.
printing a print magazine, which we had to suspend during the pandemic because our magazine is all about places to go and things to do, and we couldn't get a handle on anybody's schedule. And since we distribute it free in high-trafficked locations all around the tri-state area, there were no high-trafficked locations to distribute to. So
we put it online.
So we have created an online magazine, which has the same kinds of articles, and we will be publishing a whole bunch of new articles next week, at the beginning of August. So this is a new source of information, and one of our articles is, we have the whole Berkshire-grown annual brochure on where to buy food and where the farmers markets are and what their hours of operation are. So it's quite complete, but we also have a guide to all kinds of trails and local restaurateurs giving us their favorite recipes, which you can make at home. So it's you just go to the Berkshire Edge and go to scroll down until you see the magazine.
All right. We will speak to you guys next week. Have a safe week.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Yep. Bye.
That is the Berkshire Edge on air here on Robin Hood Radio. You can find them at theberkshireedge.com.